Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to an episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 42 today for the Imola GP in Season 3. If you guys did miss the previous one at the Australian Grand Prix, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. That was a very wet and wild one around Albert Park, starting on intermediates, going to dries, an 8-car pile-up, and it was a real shocker because the man who spun 360 a couple of times and took out our teammate Sebastian Vettel went on to somehow win the race. An absolute madness of a race there, and it was a real annoying one for as a whole for our team. Obviously Vettel with a DNF, and then ourselves, well, we may as well have DNF because we retired the car at the end of it. Engine issues throughout that entire race, and the car just feeling so broken every step of the way. Very much on the back foot. A day to forget, a race weekend to forget for sure, to try and limit the damage that rival teams can try and inflict on us in this early part of the season, whilst we still try and get out of this debt and try and actually improve the car, open up facilities. Thankfully, going into Imola, it looks like Aston Martin and Haas are the only teams that have made upgrades. So Haas will be a concerning one because Haas have generally been at the pace with us. Remember, this scaling of this R&D chart is so actually small and zoomed in that pretty much last season we would have said Haas are literally on top of us on the R&D chart, whereas now zoomed in there's a little bit of a difference, but pretty much they're there with us in this very tight midfield pack of Ferrari, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri and Haas. And to be fair, below them, Aston Martin with their upgrade, that looks like at least one major upgrade potentially. They actually get quite close and get ahead of Williams, so it's going to be a very interesting, potentially challenging one. We've always gone quite well around Imola on the recent F1 games, but to be fair, last season wasn't plain sailing around here. It was a crash out of the sprint race, I think it was, if I remember correctly, and then also a puncher at the end of the race as we crossed the line. So hoping for a bit of a smoother time this time round, and Ferrari will be hoping that they can have a smooth time because they come into this race, one of their two home races this season, leading the Constructors' Championship, with Leclerc looking very good right now in the standings in second place behind Alexander Albon, who despite not winning a race is actually in the lead with his consistency so far this season versus his more experienced and double-time world champion teammate Max Verstappen. So we've got a lot of different stories coming into this. Of course, McLaren still yet to fully prove themselves, but last race was a step in the right direction, and Mercedes having a very rocky start to the season so far. And then that midfield pack, well, it's so bloody tight that Yuki Tsunoda is topping this Q1 session with Perez in second in the Alpine, and you've got the two Alfa Romeos knocked out here with the Williams and Aston Martin. Surprising considering where Alfa Romeo are, but we saw that last episode that they've not really been performing on the Saturday, more so on the Sunday, kind of like almost like Aston Martin in real life, jumping up on the race day. But of course, this qualifying session at Imola, like all the sprint rounds, is a little bit more tricky. Limited amount of tyres, pretty much only one soft tyre per session, so all the second laps are being done, well, at least in my case, on the same tyre. So the second run is actually on a scrub set that we've just gone and set the first lap on. So in Q2, we're actually on the bubble of being knocked down P11, but we crossed the line just about getting enough time right into the final corner and last straight to get up into P8. But it was very fine, and for a moment, I thought we were going to get knocked out whilst Vettel would make it through. Vettel has made it through, but unfortunately, he's picked up a 5-place penalty for some reason. Must have been for impeding someone potentially in that session, because I can't imagine it's engine components, because those don't show up on this qualifying table. So Vettel's got a penalty that will carry in to Sunday's Grand Prix, remember, not the sprint round, but both McLarens, Mercs, Red Bulls are through. Leclerc again is the sole Ferrari that makes it by. Piastri unlucky to not make it in, and Sainz is the lone Haas that pips Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda unable to emulate the same Q3 shock that he did last time, but a lot of you noting that Tsunoda has been doing quite well this season so far. And to be fair, both the AlphaTauris have looked quite good in flashes. They just need to pick it up together and get a bit more consistency, as a lot of other teams have to. You know, so far 3 rounds and it's been very topsy-turvy, and it's hard to really picture what the fight is going to be long-term over the course of this season. I think we're all still sussing that out. Ferrari's certainly been the biggest shock of the season so far. You got to say McLaren, if they get their act together and the consistency can start to pick up pace, they'll be there. And then it's a question of Red Bull and Mercedes pulling up their socks finally. But right now, Verstappen down in P9. This is our one and only flying lap. Vettel's up in P7. We cross the line, but it's only going to be P10. We can't go any better than where we already were, having not set a lap time. Vettel remains in P7. Kind of, you know, expected us not to be so high up, because I think we did very well just to get into Q3. If you base it off, you know, the performance from Australia, Imola, you know, kind of similar-ish sort of circuits, you know, very bumpy, very tricky with the curbs, kind of, and similar sort of speed corners. So wasn't expecting a massive leap up the order, but am surprised to see, you know, my rivals from last season, Hamilton, Verstappen, down here with me in P8 and 9. It very much is the new gen of Formula 1 at the sharp end. Albon with another pole position, but Gasly's right there. Leclerc does very well to go on the second row in the Ferrari, and then Haas with Sainz as well, ahead of both Mercs, the Red Bull, and both us in this team. So, you know, Haas still going strong, at least one car in there. But the race, well, the sprint race is going to be one thing. That's going to be interesting. Everyone going full pelt, and then that will set the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. So some interesting laps to come up. Let's get into that sprint, though. Points awarded, remember, to the top 8. Vettel already inside that bubble, so hopefully we can break in on this very short and sweet race around Imola. It's going to be a very tight run down to turn 2. Let's see how we get on. Can we get some extra points today? And who will grab the real pole position for tomorrow's race on Sunday? Fire lights are out and we're underway for the Imola sprint round. And it's a bit of a shaky start for us versus Verstappen. But Tsunoda having a little look on the left-hand side. We're going to move to the right and try and find some space. Verstappen and Hamilton make contact. And Verstappen's into the wall. We're taken offline on the grass and somehow keep the car going to just come back on circuit in P15 though, so we've lost a handful of places with that off, but we are very lucky not to be taken out by Verstappen careering to the right hand side. We slowed down enough to miss his car, but he just went straight in the wall. You could hear the thud as the car went in. What is it with the past championship rivals from season 2? We just seem to all be stuck together this season and seem to be getting in all sorts of drama. Verstappen literally, well, it's a bit of a dodgy situation, to be honest, and a crash, because you can see very clearly his car submarines into the ground. So that's the game kind of being a little bit unrealistic there, and that and his tire breaks, and that kind of bouncing effect also doesn't, you know, slow him down at all. It speeds him up and he just goes straight across. We have to take evasive action because he was almost just going to slam into us and take us with him. So we had to get on the grass and slow things down, but thankfully we're able to just move back onto the circuit, you can see. But not ideal, of course. I mean, well, totally not ideal for Verstappen to be out of the sprint round. He'll be last place now for tomorrow's Grand Prix, but for us, we're down the order 5-6 positions back from where we started, so we've got it all to do to get a couple of points in this race and set the grid for tomorrow. So we're now going green from lap 3 on to 4, so this sprint race at Imola is even shorter now on the Saturday, using plenty of ERS, but the run down to turns 2, unable to really make any headway on Ocon as we all get slipstream off each other. But now Schumacher and Bottas fighting leaves Ocon vulnerable. We look round the outside, but instead we dip a tyre into the gravel and lose a position to Sergio Perez. So Ocon kind of opened up the door by going slower, but then we just didn't get the turn in I wanted on the left-hander. Went wide, so wide in fact that Perez has got us. So now we have to re-overtake Checo. A real darting dive on the inside just before a very tricky chicane with those huge yellow curbs on the inside. And then we've got a bit of a traffic jam here with Bottas and Liam Lawson, the AlphaTauri, having a bit of a scrap. Ocon stuck behind, so now second time lucky. Can we get past Ocon? It's going to be mighty fine. Tyre on the grass, but we're playing chicken with Ocon and we're going to win and dive it down the inside of Lawson and get the overtake on Bottas, because as we do it, Bottas locks up, and then we're going to dummy Schumacher left to right, get up into P10, by the time it's lap 6. But that was a mighty fine, basically triple overtake I did in one brake zone on Ocon, Lawson and Bottas. Bottas obviously helping us out massively by locking up, and Leclerc and Hamilton scrapping. They're going to help us out because they're going to slow up Yuki Tsunoda, and we'll have a go at him. We already overtook his teammate in one foul, easy swoop under braking, and we'll try and do the same now into this brake zone through the left-hander. Leclerc and Hamilton now make contact. Hamilton having a very, argy-bargy sprint race. Already made contact with Verstappen, now with Leclerc. Leclerc with a bit of damage on his front wing, but I don't think he'll be actual performance damage, maybe just visual. But we get past the Ferrari, and we're going to sail by the Mercedes car, get to the apex, slow it down, and hold position for P7. So that is a amazing recovery, actually. All things considered, to be P7 now with Leclerc and Schumacher out of this one on lap 7. Safety car deployed for the second time in the sprint race. 2 safety cars in the sprint. But that's going to be the end of the action for this one on Saturday, because we actually held position for 2 reasons. One, Vettel has a 5-place grid penalty for tomorrow's race. So the higher he can place, the better for his race tomorrow. And at this stage of the season, in this new era for us where we're bankrupt as a team, we're in debt, everything we can do to improve the race results of both our cars, I'm going to do. We need to play the team game, so we held position because there's no point squabbling and potentially having contact. And then also, as we cross the line, you may have noticed there, Sainz in the Haas had his actual own 5-second penalty in this very sprint race. So we climb up to P6. Vettel goes up to P5 because Sainz, well, we're so close to him because of the safety car are bunching us up there. So we all gain 1 free position, and Sainz, really annoyingly for him, is pushed all the way down to P10 and will start the race. Well, at least P10 or P9, because Vettel, of course, will get the 5-place grid drop that he had. But that's good for us then. 4 points scored for Vettel, 3 for us. It really wouldn't have made a huge difference if I had 4 points and him 3. 1 point, at this stage of the season when we're a team in debt, it's not going to matter too much. So we held position. That's going to help him out because now he'll start 1 position, well, 2 positions higher than actually he would have done if he finished in P6, as Carlos Sainz also dropping down the order. But in that sprint race, we didn't see it at the sharp end, but Gasly, at some point, I kind of missed it actually, got Alexander Albon. So Gasly gets the sprint race win, which means he is on the full pole position for Sunday's Grand Prix. Alex alongside him on the front row, Lando Norris and Russell sharing the second, and we'll be up to P5 on the 3rd row alongside Tsunoda. So in some interesting company. It really is the new gen in the kind of top half of this top 10 into the race, and it's going to be a really interesting race on Sunday because there is rain in the air. In a bit of a difference to Australia, the rain may be coming towards the end of the Grand Prix rather than the start, so that's going to be another spanner of the works. Let's go to the race.
Hello there and welcome back to Imola, home circuit of the Scuderia Ferrari. We expect to see a lot of local supporters wearing red today, and they've all turned out for what we're expecting will be a sensational event here at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. 1 lap of Imola, anti-clockwise of course, unlike most Formula 1 circuits, will take our drivers around 3.1 miles of track. 19 turns, 9 right-handers and 10 to the left. Drivers will need to be precise at the hairpin at turn 7, given the subsequent uphill section. Without a good exit from that corner, they'll lose a lot of time on that stretch. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. A fantastic effort from Pierre Gasly yesterday puts him on pole position, just edging out Alex Albon, who'll start from P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Russell, the owner driver, and Tsunoda, Ocon, Hamilton, Sainz, and Sebastian Vettel. They've taken a grid penalty. Perez, Stroll, Liam Lawson, and Theo Pourchaire, Schwartzman, Magnussen, Valtteri Bottas, and Felipe Drugovich, Mick Schumacher, Leclerc, Verstappen, and Oscar Piastri. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. It's race day yet again, and joining me for a chat is Anthony Davidson. And our racers are certainly in for a rough day today. What will you be watching out for as they head into turn 1?
Well, the start of the race is always one of the most nerve-wracking parts. You have to hope that everyone is able to get off to a clean start, and this is possibly the trickiest part of the entire race. So many drivers in such a small space, and finding your braking point into turn 1 as well. It's a testament to the driver's skill that there aren't more incidents.
This proper Grand Prix here at Imola now has a lot of questions to answer. Can McLaren now, with the car on pole position and third place, can they finally convert this to a race win this season? Or will Red Bull finally get an elusive race win with Alex Albon? Will his teammate Verstappen from the back of the grid be able to recover at all at a circuit that is very notoriously difficult to overtake at in the game and in real life? And the Ferraris as well, because they both had shockers. Piastri was down the order already, and Leclerc and Schumacher came together, so they're both down the order as well. So three Ferrari powered cars having to make their way from the back at one of Ferrari's home races. And for us, it's our highest grid position yet this season, thanks in part also to Sebastian Vettel having that 5-place penalty. We're in good company alongside Russell, Norris, Tsunoda, Ocon, Albon. It really is the next generation of Formula 1 here at the sharp end in Season 3 so far. It's going to be an exciting one. Rain on the way later as well, so who knows what's going to happen, but we're going to find out in a second as we go to 5 red lights for the full fat proper Grand Prix at Imola. Lights out and away we go. Norris with a good getaway, Albon slow, and it'll be a 1-2 for McLaren. It's a good getaway for us ahead of Ocon, who's had a good one to get ahead of Tsunoda into turns 2. Gasly remains in first. Albon and Russell make contact. Can we go round the outside of Albon? No, but the Red Bull's now down to P4 from pole position on the sprint round to P4. It's not a great weekend for Red Bull so far. We have a bit of a tank slapper on the curb, and the Alpine shoots down the inside there. Ocon out of nowhere actually, because it wasn't a horrendous amount of oversteer, but Ocon just had so much momentum. We're going to fight him back though with plenty of ERS deployed up the hill. Now we go through a very tricky tight left and then down the crest. Ocon though gets the elbows out, and we just can't find the room to make a move, and Tsunoda behind has a little half lunge on the inside, so the Alpine has got us fair and square, and we're going to have to wait until the main straight potentially to re-overtake him. So it's Gasly from Norris, Russell, Albon, Ocon, myself, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Sainz and Vettel, your top 10, and down below you can see Schumacher, Verstappen, Leclerc, Piastri and stone dead last. Some big names in some big teams with a lot of work to do this afternoon. For us, we're on the back of Ocon, looking to retake P5 on the inside of turn 1. Very, very close to the wall. Ocon and myself giving each other just enough room to work with into turns 2. Oh no, now not enough room given as Ocon squeezes us cleanly off. It's like Verstappen v Hamilton in 2021. In the same place, we had to go over the bumps in a similar fashion to Lewis Hamilton, and Ocon's going to fight for another lap and remain in P5. And now Tsunoda, Hamilton and Sainz, Andy, maybe even potentially in Vettel and the whole train behind them can close up. There's a huge, it's all so close from like the it's all so close from Vettel down to Schwartzman in the Williams in P15. Ridiculous midfield fight. But at the head of that train, we continue to apply the pressure to Esteban Ocon, practically pushing him up the hill through the exit of that right-hander. He's going to defend the inside line. We'll go to the outside for a very audacious attempt, but Ocon locks up horrendously, and he's across the grass. That's a massive AI mistake. I haven't seen an AI make a mistake like that at that particular corner yet in this game. First time for everything. And so Ocon is all the way down now to, I think, below P15. But now Tsunoda is having a little sniff at me because we got taken wide, a little bit flustered by that whole thing, avoiding Ocon and managing to still make the chicane ourselves up into P5. Tsunoda tucks in to try and keep up with us, but also stay ahead of Sir Lewis Hamilton as Sainz now tries his own luck at turn 2. The Haas gets the elbows out, and the Haas is going to get the position position, and so Carlos trying to make up for that unfortunate penalty he got at the end of the sprint round, and he is up into P7. The Haas very much a very good overtaking car, it would seem, this season. Meanwhile, speaking of overtakes, Verstappen trying to get past Valtteri Bottas. You've got the two Ferraris unable to get past the Williams car quite yet. Magnussen and Bottas now are side by side, but all these guys, 3 laps in, they're no higher than P15 or 16, so it's, like I said, a very tough place to overtake, even on the game, with, cars getting up to near maxed out, all this good slipstreaming, etc, etc, how lightweight the cars are now compared to the real-life counterparts. It's still very difficult, and, on this game we've noticed so far in the career mode, sometimes the AI just gets stuck a little bit in DRS trains, a lot more than they may be used to on F1 2021. So we'll kind of keep up the updates on the progress of Verstappen, Leclerc, Piastri, etc. Schumacher looks like he's pit already on lap 3, so that must be for damage. And now we cut back to the live action at the sharper end. Sainz getting past Yuki Tsunoda for P6. So Tsunoda's doing quite well to run in the top 6, but eventually the overwhelming pace is there of the Haas. And now, well, we broke away from Tsunoda, but I'm worried if Sainz now in clean air will start to catch us. We are trying to reel in Albon a little bit, but it's not going too well. Clearly Red Bull, Mercedes and McLaren very much still have a decent amount of pace over us. And, it's very evident from the R&D chart, of course, as we're yet to make a single upgrade. But a team that has made updates this season, and it's paying off right now at Imola, because they're 1-2 Gasly ahead of Norris, but Norris may try and change that with a dive bomb down the inside. The McLarens make contact, and that is going to be a bit of wincing from Zach Brown potentially, because that could easily turn into some damage with the sim damage for very much the AI as well as myself as the player. But no, they continue on, and hopefully they didn't make any race ending damage or pit stop damage. But they're both on the soft tyre. We haven't mentioned that so far, actually, in the beginning of this race. But most of us started on mediums, but both McLarens started on soft tyres. So that's also maybe why Lando got such a good jump on Albon on the start, but also why they should be ahead of every other car, because they actually need to build a bit of a buffer, because they'll be coming in earlier than the rest of us, and that could play an important part with the rain on the way. But Lando is looking like he's got other ideas. He wants to get into P1, and again they make contact in a very similar way at this same corner. But Pierre Gasly is an absolute wall, it would seem, to get past, as he remains firm in P1, gets the elbows back out at his teammate. They're both basically just hitting each other with their elbows at this point, and now they've fought so much that George Russell has closed up to the McLaren and could just ruin the 1-2. This is the opposite of what Zach Brown would be wanting on the pit wall, but Lando now squeezes George off nearly completely wide. Russell's not having any of it and keeps his foot in. So we've got some very, very choice fights going on in the top 3 now, as the two Aston Martins swap. Theo Pacher ahead of Lance Stroll. Looks like Stroll's having a bit of a struggle on this set of tyres now, because Perez is right up his chuff, and Stroll spins it. Oh, it's a calamity for the Canadian. He spins at the next corner, and Verstappen and Leclerc just about avoid it. So no wonder Pacher overtook him. He must be having a howler with his tyres right now. Meanwhile, you can see the gap is closing a little bit to Alexander Albon ahead, but mistakes like this are not going to help that, as we have to go wide and take to the escape road. We just got caught on that curb. As soon as you get into a certain placement, your car just gets dragged along it. So kind of lucky to have the runoff area, but unfortunately now we lose pretty much all the progress we made versus Albon, and we erode the gap we had to Sainz. And we're going to play a bit of a clever game here, break early and actually get the DRS detection ahead of Sainz, well, behind him technically, because I knew he was going to be right up our gearbox then, so he may as well tuck in behind, get DRS and repass him, and use that to catapult us back ahead and try and now re-engage with the chasing effort we're doing on Albon, but that was a mistake that did not help us at all and invites the pressure from Sainz. Unfortunately now at this stage of the race, lap 11, only a handful of laps away from the first pit stop. The tyres now are going off, so we're not catching Albon anymore, and Sainz is sticking with us, and he's got DRS this time on the main straight and will overtake us fair and square. Chops across us basically on the racing line, and I didn't really have anything to fight him with because I had no confidence in trying to outbrake him into turn 2, and if I even tried to, it probably would have ended with a squeeze just like Lando did to George Russell earlier. So we're going to have to try and just keep up with him and maybe re-overtake him another time on the next lap. And on that same lap later in Sector 3, Yuki Tsunoda, who was doing so well in this race, but it's going to come to a tragic premature end. The AlphaTauri out of this Grand Prix. His engine smoking away out the back. It's a big shame for him and the team. Meanwhile, Gasly's in for his pit stop. I don't believe Lando's coming just yet, but this is what I mean. This is a good 4 or 5 laps earlier than I think will be coming in from these medium tyres. We've got DRS off Sainz, so we're closing up in Sector 1. We're losing a bit of time in the corners, but we can just keep in his DRS, so we may have another opportunity to overtake him to get up into P3 at the moment on the road, but of course Lando will eventually pit as well. Meanwhile, behind, Oscar Piastri having a very loose rear end, and he's span it, and then the Alfa Romeo's come in and hit him, and he's out of the Grand Prix. Felipe Drogovic out of this one, and that's going to cause a full course safety car for the first time in this full Grand Prix. But what is it with the Ferraris as of late having a very loose rear end? Leclerc spinning in the wet and Australia, now Piastri spins it. The Ferrari may have some improved performances this season, but maybe it's to the detriment of just general car balance, it would seem, from front to rear. But under this safety car, we've got a very important choice to make. Do we come in for a set of hard tyres, knowing that rain is maybe on the way? It's already looking a bit overcast, so we have an important decision. The weather report is not giving me any info. Last minute, I decide to throw the dice, and we're going to gamble on rain coming sooner rather than later, and hopefully the ability to go from mediums on to intermediates. But everyone else is in, so we'll take the race lead under this safety car. It's already a bit cloudy, and straight away, a couple of corners down the road in Sector 2, my gamble looks like it's going to pay off, because there we go. Look at the car chassis. There is some rain droplets. The rain is already starting to fall. And so here we go. 2 laps later, lap 15, and the rain is here. We're not quite yet at intermediate, but I think within a lap or two's time, we will be. And I'm one of the few drivers that have not come in, along with, I think, Lance Stroll there in P4, splitting the McLarens, Albon potentially as well in P6, and then it's a very mixed up race order with Vettel in P10, Hamilton in P9, Pourchaire P11, because I think everyone was cramming into the pit lane for the hard compound tyre switch under the safety car, that a lot of people got a lot of traffic and maybe got held up in the pits, but we were not one of them. We stayed out, and now we are P1, and after trying to heat up our rear tyres as much as we can, we get going for racing once again, weaving about, trying to get any sort of temperature in the front tyres as we lead the Imola Grand Prix into turns 2. Russell goes deep, and he locks up, and the McLaren of Gasly straight through, and Russell even falls behind Lance Stroll. The Canadian is up into P3 in the Aston Martin, so that's why I was warming up my tyres so much, because clearly Russell didn't enough, and so he went nearly straight on and off at turns 2 and has paid the price down to P4. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel is now down to P11 with I think Pourchaire making a stonking effort. Both Aston Martins having a field day, it would seem, in these changeable conditions, because Pourchaire is up into P8 now from where he was before, and that is unfortunately Kevin Magnussen out of the Grand Prix. The Williams is out, whilst Sainz has a battle with Albon, Repsol Haas versus Aston Martin. Pourchaire not too far behind there, as there's a lock-up again from Russell. He is really struggling for grip on those hard tyres, and Norris may just make an overtake. I think the McLarens are actually on the medium compound. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually able to overtake other cars on the hard tyres, failing to heat up as much. But it's time to come in for Inters for us. Not so much for Pierre Gasly. He continues on, as well as Norris. So the two McLarens, they want to make more use of their medium compound tyre, their fresh mediums, versus my worn ones and everyone else's hard tyres, because we've got a couple of people also, well, a lot of people in. A couple of people did stay out, including Porsche and Ocon. It's a double stack, unfortunately, for myself and Vettel. That's unfortunate. I didn't want to do that to Sebastian, but we had no choice because I wanted to come in. Vettel also wanted to do so because it is that crossover period, so it's just one of those things that you have to do. Unfortunately, it's just something that is a bit annoying, but has to be done sometimes in racing with the double stack. So we are in and out again on Inters, and we will pass not one but two but three cars and get up into P2 now. Norris still out there on mediums, and you can see how wet the circuit is, so he's going to be in a world of pain and will just about come in on the next lap then. And so as we come across the line, lap 19, and we're going to pass Norris in the pits, we will retake the lead of the Imola GP ahead of Gasly. Sainz now up in P3 in the Haas, doing a stunning job. Stroll actually as well must be commended for staying in P4 with Perez P5. Porsche in P6. The Aston Martins are having a blinder race here in the wet conditions. Norris comes out in P7, so you can see how much time he lost going for one lap longer on the dry tyres. Liam Lawson P8, Schwartzman P9 and Bottas P10. It really has been a mixed up race here with the rain and all the chaos with safety cars. Vettel's P11, so he's actually stayed put where he is, and to be fair, he got a lot luckier than the likes of Hamilton and Russell. What happened to them? They're down in P15 and 18, so it's been a day to forget for the Mercedes crew and Red Bull, because both their cars are down in the bottom half of the table, whereas Vettel is looking to overtake Bottas here, and his protege Schumacher is doing the same, because Mick, in a very similar move, gets past the Alpine car of Ocon there. So both very identical moves. And like I said, you've actually got the quote-unquote top three teams of Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes, as we know them in real life. They're P14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19. Absolute shocker. They're in the last positions because Piastri is last place in this race if you don't count the DNF. So yeah, it really is one of those kind of wacky F1 races you get sometimes where it's time for the underdogs and the smaller names to shine. I guess we're not really a small name anymore in this alternate F1 universe we've created from Season 2, but it's still, time for us to shine maybe with our bankrupt, bare-bones car as we lead the way ahead of a very quick Pierre Gasly. But to be honest, it's going to be a very tough order to try and stay ahead of the Frenchman, but we'll try our best, deploying ERS all the way down this straight. It's Gasly has a massive moment. Did you catch that on your screen? So he just caught the car, we've caught our own car, and then Gasly's had his own mistake again. So you can see very treacherous conditions for myself and the AI. Let's have a look at a replay here, because this was extraordinary. Look at that. Oh my god, that could have been a race ender for the Frenchman, but he catches the car. Then we have a tank slapper here, and then Gasly kind of almost gets affected by our own mistake by watching us, and so he takes a trip into the grass, and so Sainz will be right up his chuff, and that will give us a little bit of breathing room to keep going. And even though we're in the last third of this Grand Prix, it feels like we have an age to go, and you can clearly see we are actually a lot slower, and we're holding up Gasly and everyone behind us, because a trade is forming there with Perez and even Lando, the other McLaren, joining on the rear end. And Gasly's having a look now in Sector 2. Up the hill, he dive bombs us, and he actually gets momentarily ahead of us as Sainz now spins it behind. Oh, a big mistake for the Haas. The AI mistakes are coming out in full force today, but that just proves how treacherous it really is, because that's a massive, massive moment for Sainz, as he's now down to P15. So he went from hero to zero. It was maybe going to be another podium for the Haas, But now it's going to be all about Pierre Gasly versus myself and Lance Stroll, of all people, in third place in the Aston Martin. The Aston Martins, they have 2 cars in the top 5. This could be a massive day for the green outfit. And I'm trying to do my best to have a great day for ourselves and the team, trying to keep P1, but for how much longer can we keep off Gasly's relentless charging? He goes again into turn 2 on the outside, and then McLaren can just brake so much later. And you can tell Gasly's just not struggling as much as we are, as we have a snap of oversteer on the curb, and the McLaren is gone by. We're going to try and dive back down the inside and actually take the fight to Gasly, and somehow we've stayed in first place. But you can just tell that eventually I kind of unfortunately think the McLaren is going to get us, but I'm trying my best. We're trying to hold up him and everyone. I'll truly train this as much as I can to try and get this win, but it's a tough old set of conditions here at Imola, and it was a tough one for Sainz, who just went wide and got on the curb, and was actually quite lucky not to stick it in the wall, so he's still in this race, but he's massively down the order. But meanwhile, also behind on lap 23 then, this is a replay of Norris versus Pourchaire, and this is because they've actually had to make another pit stop, and this is why. So it's disaster for Lando and Pourchaire, as they both make contact with each other on that kind of switchback that Pourchaire was trying to make as Lando came back on circuit. And so that is why you'll notice Pourchaire and Lando no longer in the top flight there, both of them down the order in P18 and 19, as we continue to try and hold this P1. And we have very much now got a 4-car train headed by myself, tail-ended by Sergio Perez for P1 down to P4. Gasly, though, is the one all over the back of us, and again, he'll try the move on the inside up the crest of the hill before swooping down. He's not quite made the same dive bomb as before, but instead, he makes the move as we go down the hill, as I try and control 2 or 3 snaps of oversteer and keep this car going in a straight line. We have to take to the escape road. Lance Stroll is going to overtake us to get up into P2. We're going to switch from left to right, dive bomb him back to get second place back and try and desperately keep on the back of Pierre Gasly, but the Frenchman's already got well over nearly 2 seconds on us. Such is the pace difference and how slow I'm going in these conditions. And to be honest, it looks so wet out there. Perez is even having a bit of a wobbly moment. I think it's soon time for the full wet tyres, you know, but at the moment, everyone's so stubborn with each other to just stick with the Inters. And Perez now has a great run off the final corner. Superior traction for the Alpine. He's going to fly by. We're trying to come back at him in some ERS, but into turns 2, I just don't have any confidence. The same confidence that all these AI cars have under braking, and Perez gets up into P2, and it looks like it's a story of me about to fall away as Stroll is now right up my gearbox. And now you've got Liam Lawson in the AlphaTauri in P5, doing a fantastic job, I must say, and Vettel, our teammate, he's only in P6 as well. So we've actually met back up with Vettel in this race, as I asked my engineer about the weather, because I'm convinced it's time for the full wet tyres, as Lance Stroll now hits us. Lance Stroll's hit us and spun us out the race. We've broken our front wing. Lance Stroll's broken his front wing, and it's a disaster. We've spanned the car around, and by the time we actually get going at full speed, we're down to P14, but with severe damage that we are going to have to come in for. So, unfortunately, for a second race in a row, it looks like we're not going to score any points today, because we'll be way down the order. But this time, it's not a car issue. Lance Stroll, he was nowhere even near us, and he just makes a late dive. And that, come on, man, that gap was closing. That was not a place to stick your nose in. That is 100% Lance Stroll's fault. There was a tiny gap that was always closing. He was at no point alongside us until the moment he hit us and spun us round. I would have, you know, gave him more room. It would have been another thing if it was a move like the one Gasly made 2 times before, where he was fully alongside or had at least half a car length alongside. But For me, that's a slam dunk. Lance Stroll just tried to dive. He's then just, realised, oh, I've made a lapse in judgment, but it's too late now. He's a passenger as the car goes careering towards mine, and he's spun us out. He's broken his own front wing. He's broken my front wing. We're now onto the full wet tyres. So I was correct. My team, on their own accord, have said, let's put on the full wet tyres, because that's what the tyre is for these conditions right now. So I was correct. So probably the reason why I was struggling so much anyway pre the spin was because it technically was time for the full wets, but because there was so little of the race left, everyone has to be stubborn and stick with inters. But in those kind of scenarios, the AI, obviously, as I try and bring as much realism to this series, at the end of the day, they are computer AI. They are pin perfect in these situations, and they're always going to drive so much better than you as the player. And so, we were going to fall down the order, but in the end, it didn't matter because Lance Stroll ruined everything, ruined our entire race. And so we're going to score no points. Meanwhile, an absolute ding-dong battle going on here between Leclerc, Bottas, Sainz and Schumacher. Schumacher trying to overtake Sainz. Now remember, Schumacher was stone dead last on lap 3 of this race, and he's now making a double dive bomb to get up into P7 maybe. What a recovery drive this is for the German. I mean, meanwhile, his, the man who's taught him so much about Formula 1, since he's entered the sport, Sebastian Vettel, up in a very high P4 now due to my spin and Lance Stroll's spin. Liam Lawson, I might add, is up in P3. Hang on a minute. That is insane. But, yeah, Schumacher gets the job done. He's up into P7. Sainz may even try and get up into P8 to make it a 7 and 8 for the Repsol Haas team. Leclerc has actually done quite well in this race, to be fair to him, to recover in P6, because meanwhile you got all the other top guys like Russell, Verstappen, Piastri, Albon and Hamilton still down out the points, P11 to P15, and then Lando of course in P16 as well after that kerfuffle with Theo Pourchaire in the Aston Martin. And both Astons, they were both in the top 5 and now they're both in P17 and 18. So I don't want to say anything, but that's karma. That's it. Even though it already happened before my spin, that's karma. And whilst we drown our sorrows in this rain, Vettel trying to get a podium, trying to overtake Liam Lawson, but he's lost the back end. Oh no! Oh, Vettel span it, but he's actually flick-spinned it perfectly to keep it going in a straight line and stay ahead of Leclerc just about. Come on, Sebastian, stay ahead, please. Let's keep the P5 at least. But it now means that, Liam Lawson has a massive amount of breathing room, but Schwartzman is into P4. So you've got 2 rookies in Formula 1 this season of Lawson and Schwartzman. They're both up in a podium, P3 and a P4. What a mad race this has been. And now Leclerc's gone wide for some reason, and he's made contact with Bottas. So Leclerc and Bottas, they're surely now going to have to come in for damage. And so it's going to mean in a flash, the Repsol Haas team have somehow come up in P6 and 7. So it's actually, in the end of it, a pretty damn decent recovery for the Haas team all round. Because Schumacher at one point was last. Sainz, remember, span it down to P15. And now they're suddenly back in P6 and 7. It really has been a mad, mad race. There's so much has happened. There's been so many yo-yos up and down this grid. But the one constant has been Pierre Gasly at the sharp end in P1. And to be fair, also Sergio Perez just slowly making his way up the order, up into a very good P2 for his new Alpine team. But there goes Bottas and Leclerc into the pits. That will elevate Russell and Verstappen into the top 10 for the first time in a long while. So they actually get a little bit lucky with that issue with the Ferrari and the Alfa Romeo as we cross those two on the last lap up into P17. It's no consolation though, because we're miles away from where we should be. And where we should be is, well, somewhere near this man, Pierre Gasly, because on the other side of the circuit, he goes through that last chicane. He's got only a couple of corners to go. Pierre Gasly, he's had a very tough time to his start of his career at McLaren, but he's going to come through to finally win a Grand Prix with this team, and McLaren are finally going to win their first Grand Prix of the season. Pierre Gasly wins at Imola. Sergio Perez, a very, very solid P2. And Liam Lawson, in only his 4th race ever in Formula 1, is going to get a podium in the AlphaTauri. It might be the driver of the day, to be honest. And Schwartzman as well in P4 in the Williams. Vettel, number 5, comes home in P5. And then the Haas is recovering well. P6, 7, Ocon, Russell and Verstappen round out your top 10 in what has been a topsy-turvy Imola GP. Dry to wet race. It always kicks up some surprises. For us, I'm left with a very, very sour taste in the mouth because, oh, that should have been at least a podium. Minimum should have been a podium for us because, well, Stroll took us out. Stroll took us out. He had no right to do that.
And that's it then for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. And what a sensational victory they've managed to pull off here. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's always a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on circuit and have come out on top.
Our winning drivers are on their way to the podium right now. It's been a fantastic race for McLaren, that's for sure. And no doubt, they'll be celebrating tonight.
So it's another different winner in Formula 1 so far in Season 3 of this My Team Career Mode. And a different team as well this time. McLaren getting their first win, the Frenchman's first for the team as well. It was a very rocky start to this season for him versus Lando especially. But he's come good, he's showed his pedigree and he's got ahead. Perez though, very, very solid for Alpine as well. You know, secretly, you know, Checo and Alpine, I feel like they're slowly, you know, quietly trying to build something and build some momentum here. You know, maybe not this season, but I can maybe picture it in a season or two's time. Maybe if things go their way, the R&D chart is kind to them, they can upgrade. You know, they might be able to build something because they're not too far off, you know, the likes of Ferrari and McLaren and Haas, really. And, you know, a race result like this is actually what they need. Liam Lawson, though, might be the driver of the day. P3. He was, like, nowhere at some point in this. I mean, lots of people were nowhere in this race before. And then they came back through. So in the end of it, Gasly gets the maximum amount of points this race weekend to go level with Albon in the championship. And Vettel is only 1 point off them in the standings somehow after 4 rounds in a bare bones bankrupt car of ours. That is just insane. And in stark contrast, we are 33 points off the top of this championship 4 rounds in. That's a hefty margin. Like, to recover from this, to actually make any kind of championship comeback and charge in later races, we're going to, one, have to hope we get out of debt ASAP in the next race or two, and we're going to have to make some massive upgrades and go out and win a couple of Grand Prix, I think. I know it's been a kind of hurricane of a season so far with kind of no one being completely consistent, so maybe just with some consistency we could come back through in the standings, but I feel like in terms of car performance today, in the dry and the wet, there's still a decent margin to go to climb back up to where Red Bull, McLaren are, and you know, even other teams around us who just make mistakes so far. But you know, 4 races in, it's still so hard to call. Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull and ourselves, we're so close to the constructors. This is slowly turning into maybe what could be an absolute corker of a season, and the season could be getting even more interesting and better soon, especially for us. We're now only just under 400k away from being back in the green and maybe being able to restart our facilities as a team and get some upgrades on the car. So there's more exciting times to come. But guys, if you have enjoyed this one, hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.